for self-discovery gets interrupted when she meets a younger hiker along the way. Before going on a solo hike on the Appalachian Trail, Bluebird, a married Spanish woman, visits the beach unclothed. She walks into the water, arms outstretched, letting the waves crash against her before swimming toward the sunset. Days later, she awakens in her white tent. She steps outside, closes her eyes, and feels the cool breeze. Then, she heads to a private spot to handle her personal needs. After brushing her teeth and refilling her water tumbler, she sits on the grass to eat. Suddenly, Lake, a younger hiker she met along the trail, joins her. After finishing his meal, Lake taps rhythms on his food container with his spoon. Bluebird joins in and they start jamming together, awakening a fellow hiker sleeping in a nearby tent. After the other hiker bids goodbye with a hug, the duo continues their journey. They take a break along the way to try and woo the wild horses, but their efforts are in vain. The following morning, Bluebird and Lake relax by a stream, washing their clothes and taking a refreshing swim. As the sun sets, the duo arrives at a hostel to spend the rest of the night. The next morning, they mingle with other hikers and play hacky sack. Later that day, Bluebird shares with the others how she met Lake, jokingly narrating that it happened when they were coincidentally relieving themselves near each other. Lake interjects, pointing out that she skipped the best parts of the story. Flop chimes in, asking if there's more to the already detailed tale. Lake then urges Bluebird to share more about how they first met. Bluebird then complies, adding audible details as she describes the moment Lake took a dump, prompting everyone to burst into laughter. Wrapping up the story, Lake adds that he apologized to Bluebird at the time for being weird, and afterward she read his palms. Hearing this, Dragon becomes curious and asks if they're hiking together every day, prompting the duo to confirm. Hex then chimes in when she notices Lake's blushing face, assuming that he and Bluebird are in love with each other. However, Bluebird defensively emphasizes that they're just friends. Lake changes the topic by asking the other hikers how long they've known each other. They respond saying they only met 3 days ago. Suddenly, they're interrupted by the arrival of another hiker named Eliza. When Dragon asks if she's a section hiker, the woman clarifies that she's finishing the trail. Bluebird then asks her how her trip's going so far, prompting the hiker to confirm that she's having a great time. When Eliza notices her accent, Bluebird shares that she is originally from Spain and that her husband's family lives in America. When Bluebird learns that Eliza's been a solo hiker from the beginning, she discloses that she was solo at first. Lake then interjects, explaining that he's met Bluebird and has been hiking with her for some time. After spending the night in the hostel, the duo continues their journey the following day despite the drizzle. During a break, Lake asks Bluebird if she doesn't grow leg hair since he hasn't seen her shave at all. In response, the woman explains that she no longer grows hair anywhere because she had laser hair removal a few years ago. Curious, Lake questions if she underwent the hair removal procedure because her husband Paul wasn't into bushy women. However, this only annoys Bluebird, prompting her to seek some time alone. As Bluebird packs her stuff, Lake continues to ask her questions about Paul, particularly about what he does for a living. Bluebird then reveals that her husband is an engineer. When Lake asks if Paul wants to have kids, Bluebird throws the question back at him, prompting him to answer no. Bluebird then shares that she doesn't want to have children either because it's complicated. Following this, Bluebird stands up and decides to spend some time alone. Along her path, she encounters a tower, prompting her to climb the stairs to the top. There, she sits in deep thought, feeling the wind on her face. Suddenly, Lake arrives, disturbing her peace and casually mentioning that he's afraid of heights. Just then, he's surprised when Bluebird attempts to jump over the wired fence. Lake immediately stops her, pointing out that his bag of chips is at the bottom of the tower. When Bluebird looks confused, he explains that he doesn't want her lifeless body to fall and crush his snacks. In response, Bluebird, annoyed, asks if she should fall in a different direction, prompting Lake to joke that it'll be the right spot. However, when Bluebird attempts to jump, he quickly stops her again. Shortly after, she apologizes for startling him, but then he ends up holding her as she stretches her arm out. Afterward, they resume hiking and take a break in a field. While Bluebird collects some blackberries, Lake instructs her to look at him, close her eyes, and open her mouth. After she complies, he playfully smashes the fruit on her face, prompting her to chase after him and put berries on his face too. She then laughs at him when he looks like a mess. Later that day, in the lean-to, the duo joins Dragon, who sings his rendition of Beer Run by George Jones. They enjoy his performance and applaud him once he's done. Following this, Dragon hands the guitar to Lake, who does a cover of Jessica Leah Mayfield's For Today. While Lake sings, Bluebird listens closely, but she silently experiences mixed emotions in response to the lyrics, which depict a push-and-pull romantic relationship. While Lake prepares his food that afternoon, Bluebird playfully bothers him by touching his face. Suddenly, she gets off the table and complains about her back. Upon hearing this, Lake offers to crack her back, which eventually leads to them sharing a kiss. However, in the midst of it, Bluebird suddenly steps away and goes for a walk into the woods alone. There, she sits on a rock and observes the beautiful scenery before her. That night, Bluebird returns to the lean-to where she prepares her sleeping bag beside Lake. Before dozing off, she informs him of her plan to come off the trail at the next town. Learning this, Lake asks if she arrived at such a destination because of their earlier kiss, but she only assures him that it has nothing to do with it. Regardless, Lake apologizes, but Bluebird points out that he has nothing to be sorry for. She admits that she's been thinking about that plan for a while. When he wants to know more about it, Bluebird suggests they continue their discussion the next morning. The following day, Bluebird encourages Lake to enjoy the day before they officially part ways. Suddenly, their moment's interrupted by the arrival of hikers Hermes and Cheese. When the guys ask if they're gonna finish the trail, Lake informs them that Bluebird decided to quit and return home the next day. However, Bluebird gets annoyed when they assume that she is quitting because she's a coward. Later, after hours of hiking, the duo decides to take a break on the rocks. Bluebird comments that they're doing a great job of enjoying their last day together. Suddenly, Lake asks if she still has a journal. In response, she says she doesn't write in it anymore because she ran out of space. Regardless, Lake requests that she read one of her entries to him. However, she boldly refuses. Despite this, he insists that she see if there's something in the journal that she feels comfortable reading to him. Bluebird then takes her journal out of her bag. Before she reads her chosen entry, she explains that she wrote it when she spent some days in California by herself, a time when she swam a lot in the ocean. She then starts reading the entry, but in Spanish. Despite this, Lake listens intently, but he only understands los ojos for eyes and agua for water. Bluebird praises his minimal knowledge of the language. However, he asks her to do a quick recap of what she read earlier in English. She agrees to the request, but she pauses for a long moment before saying that her journal entry means that she needs no one and that's okay. When Lake asks if she still feels she doesn't need anyone at the moment, Bluebird explains that she didn't mean she hated everyone. Lake responds that he never felt the same way. He shares that after his dad left, he needed her or someone, which is mostly why they started hiking together. Bluebird corrects him, emphasizing that she started hiking with him because she wanted to, not because she needed someone. Hearing this, Lake finds it contradictory that she quit the hike to return to her husband. He asks if she had an epiphany during the hike that led to her decision, and if she'll write about it in her journal. Bluebird replies that she won't be able to write it down because, as she mentioned earlier, she already ran out of space. When Lake insists she can tell him instead, Bluebird asks why he seems upset. However, he only clarifies that he's just curious because he never felt like he didn't need people. Lake begins to worry that she thinks he's stupid and shallow because he's not as self-aware as her. However, Bluebird emphasizes that she doesn't see him that way. Following their conversation, they continue along the trail and soon encounter a generous old man who offers them chili. He also gives them a makeshift angel. The old guy further explains that he always came down to serve the hiking people, recognizing that they were cold, tired, and hungry. Shortly after, the generous elder offers the duo a bit of whiskey, explaining that he can't drink it and it was a gift from a friend. He provides the rest but advises them to use it only for medicinal purposes. Lake accepts the bottle, promising the old guy that he'll make it last until he reaches the end of the trail. Following this, the hikers continue their journey. When they reach their camping spot, Lake suggests they make a bonfire to celebrate their last night together, to which she agrees. Later, after urinating, Bluebird notices a tick on her leg. However, she decides not to remove it yet and returns to the tent. There, she witnesses and overhears Lake speaking with an unclothed hiker named Ratman, who advises them to be safe and follow their hearts. Following this, the duo watches the sunset while eating their early dinner. While sitting by the bonfire, Bluebird advises Lake to get a phone in town the next day. However, he admits that he wasn't thinking about going into town with her. When she asks why, he thinks it's pointless for him to go there since he still has food for a few more days. When Lake questions if she wants him to, Bluebird tells him it's his decision. Suddenly, she brings up the idea of just giving her phone to him. However, he refuses because he thinks he doesn't really need the device, but Bluebird insists that he does, considering he'll be hiking in the middle of nowhere. She adds that it's practical for him to have access to one in case something bad happens. Shortly after, Lake decides to open the whiskey that the old man gave them, and the duo toasts to Maine, which is the end of the trail, before taking a drink. After that, Bluebird opens up, expressing that it'd be hard for her to imagine him in other places aside from the trail because she met him during her hike. Suddenly, she asks what he'll do after he finishes the trail. Before answering, Lake comments on the tick on her leg. When she brushes him off, he admits he'll just figure everything out after the hike. Curious, Bluebird questions if he ever had a job. Lake then shares that he had lots of jobs before. He notes that he was once a minor league baseball team mascot, delivered pre-packaged sandwiches to gas stations, did a carriage tour in Charleston for one summer, and lastly, was a part of a cruise ship for a year. However, what interests Bluebird the most is his mascot job. Lake details that his mascot name was Wally T. Warthog, which portrayed a grumpy pig. He then shows off his dance, prompting her to laugh. Hearing his story, Bluebird asks why he took on so many jobs. In response, Lake shares that he had a weird financial situation while growing up. One of his parents passed away when he was a kid, and the government sent him monthly checks until he was 18 years old. After learning about his background, Bluebird decides to change the subject and suggests doing something fun instead. She asks him if he wants to play a game, to which he agrees. Using playing cards, they start playing a guessing game, but they end up not taking it seriously because they're too intoxicated. When Bluebird's about to fall asleep inside the tent, Lake, lying by the bonfire, asks if she's still awake. She then turns on her little light to confirm it. Suddenly, he inquires if she is familiar with a children's book about a tiny bird hatching one day while his mom's out gathering worms. When Bluebird doesn't respond, he continues the story. He adds that the little bird, able to walk, soon meets a cat, asking if she's his mom. When the cat says no, he goes to the dog and asks the same question, receiving another no. Then he approaches the cow with the same inquiry. However, Lake suddenly stops telling the story and goes to Bluebird's tent. In the middle of their kiss, Bluebird confesses to him that she cannot have kids, explaining that it doesn't work right even if she wants to. In tears, Bluebird asks Lake to continue the children's story earlier, wondering what the cow said to the little bird. In response, he reveals that the cow's reply was, "How can I be your mom? I'm a cow." Following this, they share a tight hug. The next morning, the duo heads to the roadside to hitchhike to town. However, the first car Bluebird sees just passes by them. Luckily, the next one, a yellow pickup truck, pulls over and gives them a ride. Along the way, Bluebird enjoys the trip as the wind hits her face, while Lake seems upset and sad since it's their last moment together. The kind driver then drops the duo off in a nearby town. There, they enter a diner to have breakfast. When the waitress takes their order, Bluebird requests coffee, water, and scrambled eggs. Lake orders the same drinks but no food. While waiting for their order, Bluebird suggests they should say goodbye after eating. Suddenly, the waitress interrupts them briefly, bringing their coffee and water. However, Lake, still visibly upset, is unable to comprehend his feelings and can't say anything to Bluebird. When she advises him to eat something, he doesn't respond. When Bluebird asks him if he'll take her phone, he boldly says no. She then tells him that she didn't know he was also coming off the trail. Hearing this, he only becomes more annoyed, prompting him to suddenly stand up and excuse himself to the bathroom. After parting ways, Bluebird hitchhikes alone and is dropped off at a supermarket, where she buys yogurt. Following this, the woman books a room at an inn. There, she meets a man next door named Spencer. When he asks her where she's from, she challenges him to guess, teasing that if he's wrong, he's gonna fly away. However, they only end up sharing a physical moment together. After her encounter with a stranger, Bluebird soaks herself in the bathtub, deep in thought. Days later, she leaves the inn and hitchhikes. During the ride, the driver, a middle-aged man, asks her how her hike was going. In response, Bluebird shares that she stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks because of her bad tick, which shockingly carried Lyme disease. When he asks if she's doing okay after the removal, Bluebird assures the driver that she's already in good condition. He remarks on the luck of meeting great people on the trail. However, she mentions that she's not worried about it, admitting that her goal is simply to finish it. In response, the driver shares that people have phases in their lives lives where they don't want to be tied down. But then there are times when people want to settle down and do nothing but go to work, come home, and spend time with their spouses. He recommends that she decide on her priorities at a young age. For him, there was a time where he considered marriage and raising a family to be his top priorities. However, he reveals that everything changed one day when his wife started taking prescription drugs and deteriorated to the point of experiencing delusions. The rest became an unpleasant history for the second wife. He also mentions that he's educated and all that, so if a third woman comes along, it should be a charm. When Bluebird asks if he's happy now, the man confidently says yes, because now he can do everything he wants to do. Aside from that, he feels blessed because he has good friends to keep him company, horses to ride, guns to shoot with, and a job. Soon, they reach their destination and the driver drops Bluebird off. She then walks toward the woods, revealing her plan to continue the hike all by herself.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.